Behind this fence is the location of a toxic railroad-related business that resulted in multiple lawsuits. And I found it by simply tracing and following some old abandoned railroad tracks. If you want to find out what this used to be and how I found it, all you need to do is come along with me for my latest What Is It Wednesday video. So we just came from that direction. We kind of backtracked a bit because I want to put things in a better context and perspective. And we're over here at a familiar site. And I say familiar because, well, let me show you why. If you haven't seen that video, it will be linked down below in the description, but this is what I call the LA Canals of Pennsylvania, more simply a flood control project. And over here is a really low underpass. I had to duck my head under, and there's a bunch of spiders under there. And when I initially went through it, my commentary thought this was a vehicle bridge overpass. Well, with the help of Google Earth going back several years, I confirmed that this was a bridge for a spur line. And you can actually see the ballast is still here. So just over here, stone's throw away, is Reading and Northern, which was the former Lehigh Valley. And a spur line came off of there and crossed over right here. Now, 2005 image on Google Earth shows the rails still here. After that, they are gone. But they did indeed cross over here, added angle or diagonally, and kind of came through where this overgrown brush area is today and then cross the road. So we're going to get over there and trace the path of it, which is going to lead us to our toxic railroad related business. But the bugs are out today and I forgot to bring bug spray. Thankfully I got the glasses and the hat on. I just wanted to show you too, with the help of the Rail Guide app, which I did learn from a friend is now available on iOS. So up until recently, the Rail Guide app was only available on Android or on browser, your internet browser. And I was told it's now available on iOS. I constantly get asked, what's the app? As I've said before, it's just Rail Guide, those two words. So if you Google search Rail Guide, you can look at it on your computer browser, go to your Android store or Apple store, it should be there as well. It's a completely free service. It's a free app that documents all the rail lines everywhere around. It's not 100% accurate and not everything is on there. And a good example is that, well, we know the grade came across right here. And as I took a screenshot showing me standing on this grade, it shows the spur further up, not right here. So it is off 10, 20 feet, but still a pretty close approximate geographical location as to where the lines used to be. It's not going to be pinpoint accuracy, but it brings you in the general area. But now I want to get out of this area, get out of the sun. We're going to cross the road and pick up with the tracks over there. So we know the tracks have been removed sometime after 2005, and they're definitely no longer here. They're not buried, they have been ripped up and removed. But it came right through here, continuing at a diagonal, and would have came out somewhere right around here and cross the road. So we're going to cross the road and, well, they're not visible yet, but they are up there hiding in plain sight. So we have a small ball field here and we have a stand, restroom snack stand for the ball field. And believe it or not, the tracks came really close to this fence in this building. Well, how do I know that? Because the tracks are right here in front of us. They're actually visible again right here in the ground. So they didn't rip them up here, only behind us, and they continued straight ahead. Now up here, once we do enter into this wooded area, is where things get rather interesting. Let me get over there, I'll show you and explain why. All right, there's the ball field and the little building right there, we know the tracks came right next to that, came into this wooded area. Now initially, when it came off what is today Reading Northern, or the old LV, I thought that was a spur line. Crossed over the today flood control project, and just a single spur line. Well, as we're going to learn, I do believe it's more than just that. I'm going to come over here, and I don't want to walk through this, but I can zoom in and show you. Well, that one line has now turned to two. Somewhere over here is a switch where one line branched off to two, but it actually branched off again. What I think, and with the confirmation of the Rail Guide app, is that what we thought was a spur line coming off the old LV over the now today flood control project was a holding siding, because it came off, came through here, kept going, and I'm going to trace it and show you where it went, and eventually met up again with that same LV line. There's no other reason why it would have a little siding like that other than to have spurs coming off of this, which indeed there are. So we went from 1 to 2, and up here we're going to see it splits off again. So there's actually spurs coming off a spur, but it's actually a holding siding. If I'm incorrect about that, feel free to correct me down below. I have seen holding sidings before in multiple different railroads in different areas. Sometimes it's the way for passing traffic. Other times it's for storing cars temporarily. This case, I think it's for having spurs coming off to service that toxic railroad related business, which is right back there. Hopefully you're still following along. Hopefully you understand how I'm explaining it, trying to do it as simply as possible. So we know in this wooded area behind me here is the holding siding. We know there's a switch where it split off of that. Well, I don't know exactly where another switch would have occurred, but we know there are indeed tracks right here. They're right there. My bike is actually parked next to one of the rails, and they lead directly through the fence line into that facility. But wait, there's more. If you look right here, here is another line right here. So this line, again, comes off the holding siding, which is still back there. I'll show you that it still does exist. This line, though, comes through. It's right here, visible in the ground. And as we follow it, it's going to come through this thick area here. And if I'm not mistaken, it should also be entering through the fence line into the facility up here. They're still there. We're still tracing it. They're visible right there. Much more visible here. And as I confirmed and suspected, they did indeed enter into this facility right there. And the tracks have been cut from beyond this point, and they're actually cut at an angle. So the tracks unofficially stop right here, but they would have continued in. Now, one thing I can tell you is that these spurs going into this facility do not show up on the Rail Guide app. We know 100% tracks did go in here, but they're not documented yet on the Rail Guide app. But as we're going to learn, because I'm going to cover some more history about this place, there was a secondary spur line serviced by a secondary railroad. The old Erie line entered this property from the other end. That spur actually shows up coming into this property, but the LV spur and these switches here do not show up. But what we have right here is a jumbled pile of ties. I'm sure there's some hardware, but this is part of the holding siding, which does exist up to a certain point, but we can indeed trace where it went beyond here. We're going to do that last, so stay tuned for that. But I do want to show you the area the camera's pointing right now, excuse me, is where the holding siding did come through, and the rails still do exist up until a certain point where they were most likely ripped up and removed. So right here, we have a set of rails. We just walked in that direction. We know the rail's going that direction. This shows up on the Rail Guide app. So I'll take a screenshot of me standing here basically on this line. And this is the original line that comes off over the flood control project. This is the initial spur switch line. But now we know there's 2 additional lines that did come off of that holding siding. So there's a lot going on in a small area here. We got one line right here that we just traced, and this line here, which I'll show you, excuse me, where it does continue and then unofficially end. And right up here, right by the fence line, it does terminate. So once again, the rails were cut, not proceeding any further. But we know 100% they did. And as I talk about the history, I will show you some images as well. I do know for a fact, this line right here came in, hugged to the right, and went to like a small yard. It was for the loading, unloading, most likely loading the other materials. So this line came in deep into the property, and that one was used, definitely. The line that we traced over there, also going into the fence line, I don't think it went very far. I don't know what its use was for. On the satellite images I will show you, it's not even really visible. So I don't know its true purpose. All we do know is that it did enter this property and facility. And here's some of the old transformers and infrastructure that was involved here. Now there's nothing back here today. What you see is what is left. It's an empty field. That honking you may hear, that's maintenance away on the NS, Norfolk Southern Sunbury line. I saw them cross earlier. They're working somewhere down there. Don't mind the bugs, they're out in abundance today. Definitely should have brought bug spray. Behind this fence here was a very controversial business and location. Controversial amongst the residents that live around it. Little did I know what was taking place here. I will be honest, this is actually a location that I thought about doing a Google Maps finding on last year. But when I realized there's nothing left of it today, I scrapped the idea. But I'm kind of glad I did, because today we now know what used to exist, what was going on, and why it became a toxic, controversial business. So when I did put out that video of the LA canals mentioning that spur line that came over the underpass, there was someone who commented giving away the business name. Well, that pointed me in the right direction, allowed me to do some research and find out what was truly going on, what the tracks were servicing, and why it became controversial. This was known as Kerr McGee. It started at this 35-acre site in the 1950s, manufacturing railroad ties, commonly known as a creosote plant. It was serviced by 2 railroads. We learned the former LV, Lehigh Valley, and the former Erie. Today would be Reading and Northern, right over there, which I'm donning their shirt, and Erie would have been Norfolk Southern over there, which we heard those horns before. It would have entered the opposite end of the facility for Erie. Now this location, this business site, is surrounded pretty much 360 by neighborhoods, ball fields, even a daycare. There's a ball field up there. There's one over there. And there were thousands upon thousands of people who complained to the company and the borough about the toxic fumes. There is many cases filed in the court complaining of getting sick from the constant chemical smell of odors in the air. They called it a toxic cocktail, but it's basically the creosote smell. Now, if you've been around railroad tracks, specifically ties, you know that smell. That's creosote. That's a chemical that these ties are soaked in to help preserve them from rot and decay. But definitely a strong odor. I personally like the smell, but I could imagine smelling it 24/7 in a much greater quantity could be not so good for your health. In 1996, it was noted that this plant closed due to economic hardships, which could be true, but I think it's a bigger picture than that as to why it closed. In 2017, just 8 years ago, a settlement fund of $25.6 million was distributed amongst thousands as compensation for cancer and other health-related problems blamed on the creosote emissions. After closure, and a few years afterwards, any remaining structures were demolished, razed, and taken away. The site was fenced off and posted with all structures and equipment completely gone as of today. That's why I said I didn't make a video, because there was nothing back there to show. But today, we now know what was going on and why it became such a bad site amongst this town. So that definitely helps paint a big picture as to where all these rails are coming, why they came here, and what they were taking out of here. And it was materials for the railroads themselves, railroad ties. But I'm curious if we could get any information off the rails. So let's go over there, take a look, see if we can find anything. So this is the line that was most heavily used inside this facility. So we do see right here, it does say, let me get the light on there, Bethlehem. Bethlehem, and sometimes it says OH, this time it says Open Hearth. That was the process of it. Oh, I just disturbed it. Ant colony. Oh, they're crawling on me. Sorry, guys. Let's see now. Okay, we got some older tracks here. So we have 10/11, which is November, and these ants are not happy. 1916, right there. So that's pretty awesome. And is anyone missing a steak knife? It's right here sticking out of the tree. A little weird and random. So we're passing that other spur that came into the facility. We don't know much about that one. On our left here would have been the holding siding, which we know is now gone beyond this point. But I am able to confirm where it did indeed go. So it came out somewhere through this brush area, through this field area, near the road, and would have continued straight through here. Now here's one of the before mentioned ball fields. And prior to this ball field being here, we saw on map images, the line came right through here. So we know it came through here, coming around at a curve, and up here, I'm able to confirm where it indeed crossed over. And hit my head off a branch. And right here, I believe, is where it crossed over. And I'm gonna pull up my rail guide app to confirm this right now. Yep, I'll take a screenshot. We are indeed on the money. It did indeed cross over right here. Prior to its flood control project, would have just been a stream or a creek, would have been just a really small bridge. And we could see further up, it would have met back up with the LV main line, which today is Reading and Northern. So it is literally nothing than a holding siding. And parts of it are still here, parts of it are gone, but it all does paint a bigger picture as to what was going on back here. And again, if it wasn't for me riding inside this canal system, I never would have learned all about what was going on. That video allowed me to learn that a spur line came over that bridge, which I thought was a road bridge. That video allowed someone to comment with the business name of Kerr McGee. And following those lines brought me right to that facility and let me learn that it was indeed a toxic railroad related business. Ended up walking over closer. So through there is the ball field, the green building the tracks came next to. This line right here, these tracks, is the holding siding, the original line. And here is the split. So somewhere back here is a switch, with that switching, branching off, heading towards the facility. And we know up there, it switched off again, entering the facility at 2 different points. So we went from 1 right here to 2, and eventually to 3 up ahead. That's what's going on right there. But I just found yet another line. This might be our third line, which is right here. I didn't even know about this one. And on top of that, look what else I found. One of the switches, they're still here. Bethlehem Steel Company, New Century Adjustable. How freaking awesome is that? Still surviving today back here in this overgrowth. Arms right here, has Bethlehem stamped on it. The latching mechanism's right there where it would have been locked and bolted. The other one is right here, and I don't think it's going to move, but yeah, it's locked into place. It is, for the most part, completely intact. Now there would have been a post coming out of here with like the green and the red showing which line it's switched for. But this line though, like I said, this one's new to me. So I think there may have been, I'm trying to think now, there definitely was a switch back there for those. This switched those because it goes from 1 to 2, and then these also split off to 3. I honestly don't know what this line is. And it's actually cut right here as well. So there's a little chunk missing right here. Yeah, that one I'm perplexed. We know there's 3 lines that I confirmed. The holding siding, the original line, going in a big loop, and the 2 entering into that facility. It's almost like a little yard area looking at it today. 3, possibly 4 sets of tracks. But honest to God, this one I just stumbled upon accidentally today. But I can't find the other rail though. I'm wondering, maybe, small chance, this is just a section of rail laying here, and coincidentally enough, it's pressed into the ground looking like a rail, because I don't see the other one next to it on either side. So maybe there wasn't another rail, maybe it's just a scrap piece of rail laying there, but I still find it fascinating, but I am blown away by the preservation of this switch mechanism. It's also stamped number 30 on the side there. Gonna get some good pictures of that. Look at that. 1954. Boy, this is like remarkably good condition. I've come across some old switches before. None of them are like this. Such good condition. Everything's perfectly legible. Even the arm and everything. I just can't get over it. I don't know. I'm kind of geeking out over this. But let me know if you agree that this is an incredible piece. It's hard to believe I'm actually riding over tracks back here. Never would have think it today. This is a pretty fascinating story and location because, like I said, it all got tied together by me doing a video on that canal system, the flood control projects, learning that a spur line came across that low underpass, and we know it's no longer there, but it still exists down here. And that existence led me right to this facility, a facility that was responsible for creating products for the railroads to operate on, a creosote plant for the ties. Unless you have any other insight about the other line entering this facility, I'm just going to say that that was maybe just a secondary option line, maybe an overflow line. I don't think it was used much. This line here came in, it was definitely heavily used. As we saw in the images, it was lined with stacks of ties. And although I don't know where the other Erie line came in, maybe I will look into that in the future. But today, this area is where most of it took place. This was, as far as I know, I think also the entrance for the facility, because it has speed limit 5 miles per hour. 5 miles per hour. Contractors and vendors must report to the office. So it has a lot of signage for visitors and workers. So today it's just a grassy road. There is some old stone and macadam down here, I believe. And good to know the rails are still here. Beyond that though, I know there's a lot of people out there like myself that do love learning about and appreciating railroad history. Even though this is not a fully abandoned railroad main line, it still is related to the railroad. We have track confirmation. We have a 1916 date from Bethlehem Steel. I think we did a pretty good job at documenting this area. And hopefully the information you learned about what took place resulting in the lawsuits was beneficial as well, to let you know why it was shut down, why it became controversial, and why it's looking how it does today. But the bugs are wanting to eat me alive, so I'm ready to get out of here. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day for coming along with me for this latest railroad adventure, if you want to call it that. One that I stumbled upon accidentally not that long ago. I was happy to do the research, bring you back, and share it with you today. So thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you in the next video.